Well, good day, my friends, and welcome to the Hebraic Living Walking with Messiah broadcast. We're excited to have you here with us today as we explore the rich traditions and teachings of Hebraic living, guiding you on a journey to walk in alignment with your Messiah. Happy Purim to everyone throughout the world. And whether you're seeking spiritual growth, practical insights, or a deeper connection with your faith, this show is here to inspire and uplift you. Now, in last week's episode entitled End Time Prophecy Part 4, AI and End Time Prophecy Part 4, and the episode was entitled Come Out of Her, My People, we discussed the rise of the final Babylonian system, the role of artificial intelligence and global control, and the prophetic call for God's people to separate from the world system. If you haven't watched episodes 1 through 4, please take some time after this episode to go back and review, because each one is building upon one another. Today we are in part 5, and it's entitled Fallen, Fallen is Babylon the Great. This is the episode where the story reaches its climax. Revelation in 18 and chapter 19 describe the collapse of the final world system, the vindication of the remnant in the marriage supper of the Lamb, and the triumphant return of Yeshua as King of Kings. Now, episodes 1 through 4 showed us the rise of the beast system. Episode 5 here today shows us its destruction and the dawn of the Messianic kingdom. Remember, my friends, to plug in every Tuesday at this same time to see the show live, and you can also view it on demand on the LambNetwork.tv website. Each show is also recorded on the Daily Torah YouTube channel. Welcome to all of our new listeners. And if you're not a subscriber, hit that subscribe button so you never miss a single episode. And remember, my friends, to share this message with your friends and family. You never know whose life you may change. So we're just give a shout out to all of our brethren scattered around the world, especially those in Israel and in the Middle East, because we have listeners from all over that area and all over the world. Stand firm and know that you are in God's hands and that everything is going to work out for the best. So praise God that we are finally removing the Hamans of our world off of us once again. And this is what Purim's all about, removing Haman from the midst of his people before they destroy us, because they always seek to destroy us, and always Satan is in the minds and the hearts of these evil people to try to destroy God's chosen people, because he hates God's plan. And this is what this whole series has been about, AI and end time prophecy. This is Satan's plan to bring about the globalization of evil and to be able to usurp God's authority and to replace God, because he always wanted to replace God on his throne. And we're going to get into that more soon, and probably more in next week's episode. But let's get into it for today. Let's take a look at what we're going to cover today. So in episode 5, we're going to look at the collapse of Babylon. We're going to look at the fall of Babylon and how it symbolizes the end of a global system, reflecting both historical events and prophetic visions. And then we're going to look at things from a Messianic and Hebraic perspective. We're going to do a deep dive into Revelations chapter 18 and 19 through Messianic, Hebraic, and Talmudic lenses, and how it reveals layered spiritual insights. And then we're going to get into the prophetic and spiritual significance. We're going to talk about how Babylon's fall holds profound meaning in biblical prophecy and spiritual tradition, influencing faith and interpretation. So make sure you take notes. You can also take pictures of the screenshots, and this will be on YouTube afterwards, and you'll be able to review it at your leisure. And make sure you share it with your friends and family, because I think this is probably one of the most important series that I've done since starting the Hebraic Living podcast here on the LambNetwork.tv channel. So let's get into it. And when Babylon has fallen, let's read in Revelation chapter 18, verse 2. It says, Babylon the Great is fallen, is fallen. Notice he says it twice here. And he says it has become a dwelling place of demons, a prison for every foul spirit, and a cage for every unclean and hated bird. Referencing the demons in the spiritual entities that inhabit the hearts and the souls of many people upon the earth. They're roaming around free, and they are foul spirits, and they are demons that live among us and exist among us in another dimension. And some of them have been possessed humanity, and they influence these global leaders, and they're giving them all one mind to come against God, against the Jewish people. So what do we see here? Well, we're going to see an angel in Revelation chapter 18, and I just encourage you to go through and read both chapters, Revelation 18 and 19. I can't go through everything here in our short time together, but we're going to summarize a little bit here. But an angel is going to proclaim the fall. A mighty angel announces the collapse of Babylon, marking a turning point in the narrative of judgment and warning, which we went through in the previous 4 episodes. And there's a haunt for unclean spirits. This Babylon becomes a dwelling for unclean spirits, representing total moral and spiritual ruin. And then we have this warning against corruption. The fall of Babylon serves as a cautionary tale about the consequences of corruption and the dangers of opposing righteousness. Now, Iran just got a little foretaste of that last week, but this is going to culminate into something even greater in the future, and there's going to be peace. But when they say that, know that destruction is imminent. There are more things to come in Bible prophecy, and we know this is just the beginning of birth pangs, but possibly a reprieve for a little bit, but then we always repeat the cycle, don't we? So let's look at the Hebrew word nafal. Nafal means to fall, to collapse, or be overthrown in Hebrew. It indicates a sudden, forceful failure. It describes a catastrophic event, a biblical catastrophe. The fall of Babylon signifies an irreversible and dramatic end. It'll never rise again after this. And the emphasis is on totality. This concept stresses the completeness and severity of a downfall, highlighting its total and non-gradual nature in biblical texts. My friends, Babylon's fall is not gradual. It's sudden, catastrophic, and irreversible. So this is what's going to happen. God, when he strikes, just like the U.S. Armed Forces struck Iran this week, but when God strikes, there is no coming back. When he takes care of business, he will take care of business. And it's going to be total destruction, irreversible. Now let's look at the downfall of Babylon. How did it get to this part? Well, let's look at the corruption and immorality. Babylon's integrity eroded as corruption and immorality became widespread, destroying its ethical foundation and social trust. This turned into economic oppression and deception. This economic exploitation and spiritual deception destabilized society. And we see glimpses of that in the world around us today, right? We see that Iran, they executed like 35,000 of their own people who came against the government, right? Just recently. And so we see in society today, we see this in the EU, we see this all around the world, we see it in China, we see it all around the world, that these governments have no problem destroying their own people. Okay, if you go against them, they will destroy you. And it destabilizes society. It creates widespread injustice and the spreading of false teachings among the people, right? Remember, we talked about how Satan is going to deceive everyone, this new end time beast system. We talked about this, I think, in episode 2, and we're talking about deception. However, how AI is going to be the tool to bring about this global deception and to spread misinformation among the people. And then Babylon's fall also deals with injustice. It collapses from injustice because persecution of the righteous revealed the system's rebellion. And Babylon ultimately fell because of its own wrongdoing and injustice. And God steps in and brings about true justice. But the system collapses under the weight of its own rebellion. Rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft, and God steps in and he takes care of business, and he removes this rebellion from the face of the earth. Now let's get into some of the subsections here with the economic collapse in Revelation. Let's talk about that a little bit. In Revelation 18, it depicts a swift and dramatic downfall of the world's economic system, leaving merchants in despair. It's a sudden economic collapse. It's just like the whole market is going to collapse and people are going to be devastated. There's going to be a loss of value in demand. Goods are going to become worthless as global demand disappears, affecting both luxury items and everyday commodities alike. And of course, it's going to have an impact on the livelihoods. People are going to be shaking their fists at God and at the Jews and at everyone because they're going to be blaming God. They're going to be blaming the Jews that all this has happened. Oh, you guys collapsed the world. And it's going to have far-reaching effects, and it's going to disrupt livelihoods and illustrates a profound economic and social consequence of this rebellion. So they think they're going to be living high on the hog, right? And this economic collapse is going to come, and it's going to affect everyone, both poor and rich, slave and free. Everyone will be affected globally. There will be no escaping from this economic collapse. Now let's look at some of the list of goods that people are trading in right today. This is happening today. And this is why God has to step in. These symbols of wealth, right? We have these luxury items, we have precious metals and fine clothing that Revelation talks about that they can't trade anymore. And they illustrate the affluence and social status in historical trade, right? Well, this is all the elite globalists who trade in all these luxury items. And then it talks about spices and livestock and transportation. These are all vital for commerce, meeting practical needs across different societies. But here's the most important thing that we're just now seeing since this Epstein Island thing has blown up. We're seeing human exploitation. The inclusion in Revelation 18 talks about that they were even buying and selling human souls. Okay, this exposes the dark history of human exploitation and the commodification of people. My friends, the final Babylon traffics in everything, including people. We're talking about like China right now. What do? They kill people. And what do? They harvest their organs for their elite society. You pay a price. You need a new liver. You need a new spleen. You need something, a new heart. Hey, pay the price. They'll go find it for you. No waiting in line for years and years and years. They'll go find it for you. My friends, this final Babylon it traffics in everything, including people and people parts. And this is the ultimate expression of a system that sees humans as commodities. Humans who are created in God's image are treated like commodities, like pieces of whatever. And they have no value except for what they need them for. And so this is the ultimate debauchery in our human society. So the world, of course, is going to mourn all this, right? And we see this in the world today. I mean, we see everyone's going crazy in the world, and you can see the spiritual deception is already here. And it's getting on a grander and grander scale. In Revelation 18, verses 11 and 13, it says, "And the merchants of the earth will weep and mourn over her, for no one buys their merchandise anymore." And like the list we just went over, merchandise of gold and silver, precious stones and pearls, fine linen and purple, silk and scarlet, every kind of citron wood, every kind of object of ivory, every kind of object of most precious wood, bronze, iron, marble, cinnamon, incense, fragrant oil, frankincense, wine and oil, fine flour and wheat, cattle and sheep, horses and chariots, and bodies and souls of men, as I just mentioned in the previous slide. So let's take a look. What are the modern parallels of exploitation? Well, what do we see in the world today? We see underpaid labor in supply chains, right? Many global supply chains and digital commerce platforms depend on underpaid labor. Why do you think President Trump is so adamant about bringing manufacturing back to America and using American labor? Because they're using slave labor in China and all across the world to make cheap goods. And the people who own these companies, they love the cheap goods because they make more money, right? More profit for them, but more exploitation for the poor of the world. So this echoes historic patterns of economic exploitation. But then we have data harvesting and surveillance, right? All these gadgets that we use, Facebook, Instagram, all these things that we use, and Google, and all these different apps, they give them to us for free. But what do? They harvest our data and they surveil us. They surveillance humans. And these companies, they profit from personal data. You ever notice when you surf on the internet, you always got to accept the cookies, right? Well, when you accept the cookies, that information goes out and gets aggregated somewhere. And the next thing you know, you start seeing ads popping up for something that you were searching on or doing some history on. The next thing you know, you got all these ads popping up all over the place on these terms that you were trying to do research on. Well, they sell your personal data, and this is called surveillance capitalism, and they raise serious ethical and privacy concerns worldwide. But everyone is doing it, and there's nothing been put in place. There should be no cookies allowed, in that they can't harvest your data. Now, there's some privacy things you can use. You can use like VPNs or different blockers like the Brave browser and some other browsers to be able to thwart some of that. But they're always going to come back. They're always going to come up with new algorithms, new ways to harvest your data. If you have a Facebook account, forget it. They scour everything that's on your profile and they sell it to advertisers and different people. No matter what type of social media account you have, you can't get away from it. Now, the human trafficking continues as a critical issue, and it reveals the dark side of unchecked economic growth in today's world. Like I said, they're harvesting body parts, little baby embryos. You know why they want the abortion industry to keep going, right? Because they can sell all those baby parts and make different transhumanism little potions out of them to be able to give people youth and vitality. They use them in cosmetics and all kinds of different things that we don't even know about. And these Hollywood stars and these elites drink that up, and they think they're going to give themselves a fountain of youth by ingesting the fluids and stuff of aborted baby tissue. So, my friends, it's demonic. Everything that we see in this Babylonian system is demonic. But the fall of Babylon is the collapse of a global economic machine that's built on exploitation. And we see it all around the world today. Now, what about the AI collapse? When AI collapses, there's going to be a system blackout. There's going to be economic instability, like we talked about. There's going to be this disruption of AI-powered financial networks, and this could cause significant economic instability and impact global markets. And we know that's going to happen when all this collapses. Failure of digital identity systems are going to result in widespread authentication problems, preventing users from accessing vital services. How many of you now have to get a code or something sent to you on your phone or do facial recognition to be able to get onto your bank, to get onto this account or that account? You know, everything is tied in now. It's all mixed. Remember, we talked about the other week about this mixture of technology and humanism. Well, we have this mixture now where we need the technology to be able to get into some of our accounts. And then there's going to be supply chain interruptions. This AI controlled supply chain could halt, affecting the distributions of essential goods and services worldwide. And then it's all going to lead to a communication grid failure. Communication and surveillance networks, they're going to go offline, and it's going to undermine the safety and disrupting societal connectivity. My friends, when Babylon falls, the world's digital nervous system collapses with it. Okay, that's why a lot of people are getting off the grid. They're going back to things that do not require technology and going into cash-based or bartering type systems, gold and silver, things that you don't need a computer for or your phone for, because when it all collapses, everything is going to collapse and you're not going to be able to, just like the Babylonian system says, well, if you don't accept the mark, you can't buy or sell. When God steps in and destroys the Babylonian system, they are not going to be able to buy or sell. So he flips the tables on the world and says, hey, this is the way I'm going to deal with you. And they're going to, have their own curses come back upon their own heads. So my friends, the call to come out of Babylon is repeated. In Revelation 18, there is this echo of a prophetic appeal. It repeats an earlier call that we talked about last week, I believe, urging believers to distance themselves from Babylon and spiritual confusion. There's an emphasis on truth alignment. This call highlights the importance of aligning with God's truth and choosing clarity over confusion. None of us know who are doing these podcasts, and we're on the Lamb Network. None of us know how long we're going to be able to get this message out. There's going to be a time when the systems are going to cut us off, and we're not going to be able to get these messages out. There's going to be a time when they ban the Bible as a hate book. And if anyone is caught with a Bible, they're going to confiscate it and burn it, just like they did in Hitler's Germany. These times are coming, my friends. You think you have it all good now and you're enjoying life and you're doing this and doing that, but this things can flip in an instant. Just look at the people in Iran, right? Just last week, they're living kind of like peacefully, even though they're under oppression. The next thing you know, they got bombs flying from the sky. The world can change in a day, in an hour, my friends. That's why there's this urgency to make a decisive action. The repetition of coming out of Babylon underscores the urgency for us as believers to take decisive action in response to God's prophetic warnings. This is the final warning before judgment. The remnant must detach from the system spiritually, morally, and economically. We can't be part of the system. When God comes to bring judgment, we have to detach. And we are told and warned, and it's a command to come out of Babylon. It's not a choice, it's a command to come out of Babylon. Or are you going to be like Lot's wife, though, that you love it so much being in the world that you're going to turn back, and then you're going to face the judgment, and you're going to be refined through the fire? So the choice is yours. Even though it's a command, the choice is yours whether you are going to adhere to God's calling to come out of Babylon. So, my friends, it's going to be an earthly mourning. Heaven's going to rejoice, but the earth is going to mourn. The earth is going to mourn Babylon's fall as kings grieve loss of power, and merchants lament over their wealth that's lost, and the shipmasters mourn their trade coming to an end. But there's going to be a heavenly celebration. Heaven is going to rejoice over Babylon's fall, celebrating righteous judgment and justice prevailing over corruption. This is a striking contrast of heaven's joy with earth's deep sorrow over Babylon's destruction, highlighting the difference in perspective. And this is going to be the time for us as believers to rejoice. So there's going to be a joyful celebration in heaven. My friends, heaven is going to be filled with joy as the saints, the apostles, the prophets who are still left alive celebrate together. And remember the scripture where it says the souls of them who are waiting for the redemption, eternally in heaven, they're going to be rejoicing. Even though the resurrection hasn't come yet, these souls attuned with God are going to be rejoicing, because all of us are going to recognize the fulfillment of divine justice. And while heaven celebrates, the world mourns the collapse of its empire, emphasizing the difference between spiritual triumph and worldly loss. And this is where the triumph of the faithful come in. That's why Yeshua says to endure to the end. He who endures to the end shall be saved. The honor and praise given in heaven highlight the triumph of faith and the legacy of those who served God's purpose faithfully throughout history. Remember the other scripture Yeshua says, when he returns, will he find faith on the earth? That's why the remnant is just going to be a very small portion of God's people who are going to make it. Remember, there's going to be the great apostasy, the great falling away. And we see that now. Battle lines have been drawn, my friends. Battle lines have been drawn. You're either with God or you're with the world. And the world is going to mourn the collapse of its empire, but heaven is going to celebrate the justice of God. Where will you be when this time comes? Will you be mourning or will you be celebrating? Because the next thing that's going to come after the judgment of God and the return of Yeshua on Yom Teruah, the Feast of Trumpets, that last trumpet is going to sound, and Yeshua is going to come, the dead will be raised, and those who are left alive at his return will be changed and transformed. There will be a transformation, but not like the world thinks. There will be a true transformation into eternal, immortal spirit beings. And that comes when Yeshua arrives with his army as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. So we're going to shift into Revelation 19. We're going to shift from judgment to celebration. Revelation 19 transitions from the fall of Babylon to a scene of great celebration among believers. We have this marriage supper, the symbolic marriage supper of the Lamb that symbolizes the union of Messiah and his congregation of believers, expressing fulfillment and love. This is how it should have been from the very beginning of time. but it's taken, 6,000 years to get to this point. And we're going to talk about next week, my friends. You don't want to miss next week's episode, because we're going to talk about the restoration of Eden, of the Garden of Eden. But this joy and victory for believers, this event marks a time of triumph and fulfillment, bringing joy and victory to all believers. In Revelation 19, verses 7 and 8, what does it say? Let us be glad and rejoice and give him glory, for the marriage of the Lamb has come, and his wife has made herself ready. And to her it was granted to be arrayed in fine linen, clean and bright, for the fine linen is the righteous acts of the saints. That should be us. We should all be there when this happens. We should all be part of this marriage supper. Destine it and purpose it in your heart today, my friends, that you will be part of the marriage supper. So let's look at some of the Hebrew wedding insights. What is the meaning of chatunah? Well, chatunah represents more than a wedding. It stands for a covenant union and profound commitment. And then we have the word kala. Kala means bride, emphasizing her readiness and importance in the marriage ceremony in Hebrew culture. So we have this spiritual and relational depth of the Hebrew meanings here, this Hebrew wedding language that highlights the spiritual and relational difference, uniting two lives with deep meaning. My friends, this is the moment the prophets long for, and all believers throughout history, for the union of Messiah and his people. My friends, it's coming. Do you believe it in your heart and soul that this day is coming? It is coming. You see Bible prophecy being fulfilled right before our eyes right now. The Gog and Magog war is the next event that's going to happen. And this war with Iran that just happened is the catalyst that will bring it together. It may take a little while, but it's going to come together. This will be the catalyst that brings that together in the rise of the anti-Messiah. It's just around the corner. I put this slide together. I know it's hard to read the words, but I wanted you to just picture yourself here. Here comes Yeshua from heaven on the white horse. Here's the bride, the congregation of believers singing and rejoicing, reading the Torah, the bride of Messiah, Shalom. So what is the bride's qualities? Well, righteousness and moral integrity. The bride is adorned with righteous deeds, embodying deep moral clarity and spiritual maturity. And then we have to be purified, the purification, and we have to be ready. Purification signifies spiritual cleansing and a state of readiness for the sacred union. Just like during this time of Purim, when Queen Esther, she had to be purified to become the queen. Remember, they had the beauty contest, and they took a long time, like 6 months or so, to go through this beautification and purification to be ready to present themselves to the king. We should be going through that preparation right now. And we have to be vigilant, because preparedness reflects vigilance and devotion, crucial for maintaining spiritual maturity and commitment. Are you truly committed to your bridegroom, Yeshua? Do you truly love him with all your heart, soul, and mind? Are you faithful and committed to him? Because faithfulness shows unwavering commitment, and it's a key aspect of the bride's spiritual character. So I hope and pray that all of us remain faithful and committed and are preparing to meet our bridegroom, because he's coming. He's preparing a place for us, and soon the Father is going to let him come and usher in the kingdom and claim his bride and take her to be his own, because the king is returning. In Revelation 19 again, verses 11 through 16. We'll just summarize here, but heaven opens. A white horse appears. The rider is called Faithful and True. That's Yeshua. His robe is dipped in blood because he just slaughtered all the nations and put the Satan and the false prophet and all the anthem Messiah into the pit, right? His name is the Word of God, and he judges and makes war in righteousness. And on his thigh is written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. My friend, Revelation 19 depicts a decisive triumph over evil, showcasing the end of darkness and the establishment of divine justice. This chapter highlights the unmatched power and authority of the returning king, emphasizing strength and righteousness. Okay? There's no doubt who's going to win this war. All right? The King of Kings, the creator of heaven and earth. No one can stand against him. Read Zechariah 14. What happens when he returns? Their flesh and their eyes are going to dissolve. It's going to be, no one can stand against Yeshua. And it's going to bring hope in the promise of restoration to the believers, signaling a new era of peace and divine reign for believers. My friends, this next chapter in human existence, which will turn into spiritual existence for us, is right around the corner. It is not far away at all. The key is, are you ready? Are you preparing for this time? Now let's look at the Hebraic titles for Yeshua. King of Kings, Melech HaMelechim, means King of Kings, representing the supreme authority and majesty attributed to Yeshua. Lord of Lords, the Adon HaAdomim, translates as Lord of Lords, highlighting unmatched sovereignty and ultimate power. There is none like him. He is the Adon HaAdonim. He is the Lord of Lords and the Melech Melechim, the King of Kings. These Hebrew titles express Yeshua's ultimate majesty and power given by the Father, emphasizing reverence and respect in our faith. My friends, this is not the suffering servant of Isaiah 53. No, this is the warrior king of Isaiah 63. Go and read Isaiah 63, and that is Yeshua when he returns. So when he returns, what do we have? Well, we're going to have the defeat of the beast and the false prophet. The beast and the false prophet represent ultimate opposition to divine goodness, embodying evil forces against righteousness. We all know that. And there's going to be this divine judgment. Their defeat is marked by being cast into the lake of fire, illustrating decisive divine judgment and punishment. And then we have the triumph in restoration. The victory reflects the triumph of good over evil. Finally, there will be true peace on earth. Evil will be vanquished. And it symbolizes the restoration of righteousness and moral order. My friends, the climax of Revelation 19 is the destruction of the beast system. And we should be excited that this time is coming. So what do we see here? The key events, just to sum it up. The beast is captured. The false prophet is seized. Both are thrown alive into the lake of fire. Their armies are destroyed, right? And Satan is put into the pit where he has to stay for 1,000 years. And then he'll be released for a little bit. And we'll get into that at another time. But for now, the system that rose through deception falls through divine judgment. God will finally come and judge the earth with righteousness, and evil will finally be put away and removed from this earth, and death will be swallowed up in victory. So these days are coming very quickly. So let's look at some Talmudic visions of this final war. I like to bring this in from the sages sometimes because they had insight and foresight that tie right in to our Hebraic Messianic belief systems. And we need to not dismiss it. We need to embrace it and to learn from it. So they too, in the Sanhedrin 98b, it says Messiah will come in a generation that is either entirely guilty or entirely righteous. Okay, it talks about this tradition that speaks of a significant war before the Messianic era, signifying history's turning point. And we know, just like in the time of Noah, and Yeshua says it's going to be just like in the time of Noah. And what did God say? That the hearts and souls of men were continually on evil. And so he had to bring the flood. Well, it's going to be that same way in this world system, except for the remnant who are staying pure and preparing and staying faithful to Yeshua and the testimonies of God. The whole world, the whole generation of mankind will be entirely guilty of God's judgment. And then it says in the Zohar in Va'era 119a, it says, in the end days, the nations will gather against Jerusalem, but the holy ones will fight, or the Holy One will fight for his people. And that's speaking of Messiah. And go and read again Isaiah 63 and Zechariah 14, and you will see that Yeshua comes and fights for his people. And Revelation 19 aligns perfectly with these ancient expectations. So I just wanted to share that with you so that you can share it with your Jewish brethren, maybe some Orthodox who don't quite believe in Yeshua, but you can lead them to Revelation 19 and have them tie it into the Zohar and the Sanhedrin portions of the Talmud and say, listen, Revelation 19, Isaiah 63, the Sanhedrin, the Zohar, they all fit together. They all tie in together. And this is how you start bringing that dialogue together so that we can also be witnessing to our Orthodox friends. So with our remaining time here today, let's look at the Messianic takeaway and what's revealed to us here. Well, number one, and you might want to take pictures of these slides if you want. I'm going to go through these. Number one, we're going to have the sudden fall of Babylon. Babylon symbolizes the global system, and its sudden fall highlights the instability of worldly powers and institutions. The worldly powers and institutions are temporary, reminding us not to rely on them for ultimate security. Okay, your guns, your gold, your silver are not going to save you during this time. They may be able to be used for a period of time, but ultimately our salvation comes from Yeshua. And so believers are encouraged to place hope in God's sovereignty, promising victory beyond earthly failures. Now, point number two, the remnant must separate. We are called to be separate, set apart, holy, kadosh. That's what that means, right? Holy, to be set apart for God's special purpose. The importance of separation is that it helps preserve our unique values of the Torah and purpose of living a Torah-based, absorbing a Torah-based lifestyle, Hebraic living, as this podcast is called, safeguarding the group's integrity and mission clarity. So we must all be clear, and we must all have integrity of what our purpose is here on earth. Our purpose is in Matthew 28, to be making disciples and proclaiming the gospel, teaching others what Yeshua taught us. That is our purpose, and that is our great commission. So our identity is a central factor in determining the destiny and direction of individuals and groups, but maintaining this separation allows fulfillment of unique destiny without compromise, ensuring clarity and integrity. We must be God's holy, set apart people. And we can only be God's holy, set apart people when we stop bickering and having divisive attitudes towards one another about sacred names, in calendars, in the two houses, in this person, in this group of people, in that group of people. If we are all believers of Yeshua, and if we are all trying to adhere to Torah and living a Torah-based lifestyle, we need to become unified. Because when the world comes against us, no one's going to come to our aid. We must be unified and we must come together as the people of God. And then point number 3, heaven rejoices when the world systems collapses. Heaven celebrates the victory of God's perfect justice, marking an end to corruption and the rise of righteousness. God's judgments restore balance, offering hope and joy to those who have awaited true justice. My friends, God's justice is perfect. You know, what is it, like 1/3 or more of the earth, of humanity, will be destroyed and killed. And people will cry out, well, God, is that a just God? Yes, it is, because they would not repent. God's justice is perfect, and everything that he does is based on Torah. So if you're not adhering to Torah, you don't understand the justice system in Torah, then you do not understand God. So then point number 4 is the bride must prepare. My friends, we must be active in our spiritual preparation. Spiritual growth and commitment are required for holiness. This involves actively preparing through faith and devotion. Holiness has to be a lifestyle. As I said before, we need to be living a Torah observant lifestyle in holiness, set apart by God. Holiness is not optional, my friends. It demands a lifestyle aligned with faith, purity, and sacred values that can only be by living Torah. Okay? Torah has not been done away with. How many times have we seen on social media and on X that the church has replaced Israel and the Jews? And the Jews have been kicked out because of their unfaithfulness. And now the church is the true church and they've replaced Israel. That is not true, because they don't even observe a Torah-based lifestyle. They have rejected Sabbath. They have rejected the holy days, the Moedim. They have rejected eating kosher in Leviticus 11. They don't even know what the Torah says. They don't even know how Yeshua lived a Torah observant lifestyle, how the apostles lived a Torah observant lifestyle, and the first century believers also lived a Torah-based lifestyle. And it wasn't until Constantine in 321 AD is when everything changed, because there could not be any communication. There was no reconciliation between the non-Yeshua believing Jewish people and the new believers in Yeshua. So they totally separated, and the new Christians did their own thing, and they forsook their roots. And so they thought that they could replace Israel and become the new Israel. And they have been living in error ever since. And the only way that we can prepare now as individuals, because we have to work out our salvation with our own salvation with fear and trembling, and that includes prayer and studying scripture, studying Torah. If you're not a subscriber to my daily Torah YouTube channel, all right, I have the Daily Torah podcast every day, my friends. Subscribe to the Daily Torah so that every day you get a little bit of Torah. I go through the Torah, the half Torah, the Brit Hadashah, and I put it all together in a nice 15-minute summary for the day. It starts on Sunday, ends on Shabbat. You listen to that, you've gone through the whole Torah portion for the week with my commentary, and it's very uplifting and encouraging. So you're driving to work, or you're in school, or just going about your day, plug in for 15 minutes and listen to the word of God, because I read a lot of scriptures. I actually read many of the portions verbatim, and then I give commentary on it. So I encourage you to be a subscriber to the Daily Torah channel. So we need to be living out these values that reflect readiness for the spiritual union with Messiah that is fast approaching. Because point number 5, Yeshua is returning as a warrior king. You know, there's a dual symbolism here. Yeshua embodies both the Gentile or the gentle lamb and the mighty lion, representing sacrifice and kingship in one powerful figure. He returns as warrior king, signaling the defeat of evil and the rise of justice, true justice, fulfilling prophetic promises. The Messiah's dual nature unites humility and power, achieving final triumph as foretold in prophecy. And then this should really be number 6, I think. The beast system ends in defeat. My friends, let me make sure I didn't skip a slide. Nope, sorry. I misnumbered them, but this should be number 6. The beast system ends in defeat. The defeat of the beast system demonstrates that evil cannot endure and is ultimately vanquished. Evil is not going to prevail, my friends. No matter how hard they try, no matter what you think is going to happen in the world, no how hard they try to control us, in the end, God wins. The story emphasizes that justice and goodness will overcome adversity even in challenging times. Yes, there's going to be challenging times upon us very soon, but in the end, God brings about his justice, his final judgment upon the earth, and he will prevail. So this should inspire us to believe that righteousness and truth are destined to overcome evil forces. And we have to be in alignment with Yeshua and with the Father. Because the Revelation's prophetic crescendo is that this fall of Babylon that's described in Revelation represents the collapse of worldly powers and the triumph of divine justice. And it talks about the crescendo is also brings about the marriage supper of the Lamb. This event symbolizes the joyous union between Messiah and his followers, celebrating redemption, victory, and fulfillment. The Messiah's return fulfills the ancient prophecies that we've been studying and reading in the Torah for thousands of years, bringing ultimate triumph, restoration, and hope for a failing humanity. You know, Adam and Eve, you know, they had the fall in the garden, and they were kicked out, and mankind has been suffering ever since. Well, now the second Adam is coming, and he's going to restore everything that was in Eden. And that's what we're going to look at next week. We're going to explore the millennial kingdom and Eden restored. What do you want to be doing in the millennial, my friends? Have you ever thought about what your role will be in the millennium kingdom? I know what mine is. I know what I want it to be. I've asked the Father for it, so nobody else can have my role, okay? Because I have a unique request from God that I want to do something very exciting for him and for all believers. Nothing for myself, but I want to build God something that I think will be something that the world will enjoy for thousands of years to come. So I'm looking forward to that. We're a little early here today. I ask that you will drop your comments here or in the YouTube channel. If you listen to this on YouTube, I always try to reply when I can. I just thank you for listening. Thank you for being here, and just pray that that you got something out of this. But next week we're going to talk about Eden being restored. So until then, my friends, walk in holiness, stay grounded in Torah, and keep your eyes on Yeshua. Share this message with your friends and family. Go to our website if you want to. It's mymdi.org, mymdi.org. And you can go there, and we have free classes there. You can also order some of our books. We have the Daily Torah series. I have a 5-book series on the Daily Torah that you can read. It goes through the Torah, Haftarah, and the Brit Hadashah. It complements our Daily Torah channel that we have. We also have a full-blown yeshiva there where you can get a certificate in Messianic studies. You can get up to a doctorate if you want. There's a catalog there that you can download. There's free classes there that you can take. We have Introduction to Things Messianic, Who is Israel, the Set Feasts of the Lord. You can take those classes for free. And there's links to the podcast, and there's other blogs and things. You can sign up to be a subscriber. And whenever I send out an update or blog, I send it out to all the subscribers there. Also, I'm looking at putting together a trip to Israel, probably in 2027. So if you would like to go to Israel, you can contact me. Use the website form at mymdi.org. Send me an email with the subject line Israel, and let me know. I'd like to put together a group. I've done this before. We've had a great time. I think Israel is going to be wide open here very shortly, and we're going to be able to go and see things as Messianic Hebraic believers that most people don't get to go see. So we have special arrangements where we can go see some nice sites and not just the everyday sites that most Christians and other people go to see. So we have some special arrangements there. The last time I was there, we saw the 2 cornerstones of the temple, of the third temple. We went and had refreshments with an Orthodox Jewish friend of mine of the Temple Mount Faithful. Maybe you know him, Gershon Solomon. And we had refreshments with him and went out in the back and was able to touch and see the 2 cornerstones for the temple, for the third temple. So it was a very exciting day. We also saw a Paul Wilbur concert live. The Up to Zion concert was recorded live in Jerusalem, and I got to take the whole group there. So we were all part of that recording. So that was an exciting time also. So until next week, my friends, be blessed, stay faithful, and enjoy your day, and happy Purim, everybody. If you missed today's show or want to watch it again or want to tell someone where they can watch this episode, go to lambnetwork.tv, where you will find this show and all the other live Lamb Show archives in the on-demand section of the website. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to tell someone about the Messianic Lamb Network. We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussions, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the lambnetwork.tv website. I'm Jeffrey Clark. Thank you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.